The rain fell in steady sheets across the grand estate, turning the cobblestone driveway into a mirror that reflected the warm golden lights of the mansion beyond. Sarah knelt on the cold wet stones outside the ornate iron gates, her baby Emma, wrapped tightly in her arms beneath a thin jacket that did little to shield them from the storm. The mansion loomed before them like something from a dream. Tall windows glowed with soft light, and she could see the silhouettes of people moving inside, safe and warm. The contrast between their world and hers felt like an ocean she could never cross. Sarah's knees ached against the unforgiving stone, but she didn't move. She had been here for 2 hours now, waiting, hoping. The security guard had told her 3 times to leave, but each time she had simply shaken her head and stayed put. This was her last chance. Her only chance. Emma stirred, in her arms, making soft baby sounds that tugged at Sarah's heart. At 8 months old, Emma was growing fast, and Sarah's milk supply was dwindling. The baby needed formula, needed proper food, needed things Sarah couldn't provide. The eviction notice in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Through the gates, she watched expensive cars come and go. Women in evening gowns stepped out under umbrellas held by uniformed attendants. Men in tailored suits hurried up the wide stone steps. This was a different world entirely, one where people didn't have to choose between paying rent and buying baby formula. The wind picked up, sending a fresh wave of cold rain against them. Sarah pulled Emma closer, whispering soft reassurance. Even as her own teeth began to chatter, she had heard about the man who lived here, Marcus Blackwood, the CEO of Blackwood Industries. Some said he was ruthless in business. Others whispered that he had a heart buried somewhere beneath all that success. Sarah didn't know which version was true. She only knew that she had nowhere else to turn. Inside the mansion, Marcus stood at his office window, watching the strange scene unfold. He had noticed the woman an hour ago when his assistant mentioned the security issue. Now, as the rain grew heavier, something about her stillness bothered him. Most people would have given up by now. They would have run for shelter, found somewhere warm and dry to wait out the storm. But this woman knelt there like she had nowhere else to go. Like this was her last hope. He thought about calling security again, having them remove her properly. This time, it would be the sensible thing to do. The safe thing. But something in the way she held that baby, the careful way she shielded the child from the rain, while exposing herself to its full force, made him pause. Marcus had built his fortune by reading people, by understanding what drove them. Fear, greed, ambition. But what he saw in this woman's posture wasn't any of those things. It was something much more powerful. It was love. Desperate, protective love. He found himself walking toward the front door. Sarah's heart leaped when she saw the massive front door open. A tall figure appeared in the warm light, then began walking down the stone steps toward the gates. She recognized him immediately from the business magazines. Marcus Blackwood himself. Her stomach clenched with a mixture of hope and terror. He approached slowly, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles as if he didn't notice them. When he reached the gates, he stopped and looked down at her. Sarah met his eyes, surprised by what she saw there. She had expected coldness, irritation. Instead, she found something that looked almost like concern. "You've been out here a long time," he said quietly. His voice was deep, but not harsh, not angry. Sarah's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "Yes, sir, in this rain, yes, sir." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. There was something familiar about her features, something that nagged at the edge of his memory. But it was her eyes that held him. They were the same pale blue he remembered from long ago. The same eyes that had looked at him with such kindness, when he was the one in need. "What's your name?" he asked Sarah. "Sarah Martinez." The world seemed to stop around Marcus Martinez. After all these years, could it really be? He looked at her more closely now, seeing past the exhaustion and desperation to the features underneath. The delicate nose. The way she tilted her head slightly when she spoke. It was impossible, but there was no doubt. "Your maiden name," he said slowly. "Was it Morrison?" Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, how did you know that?" Marcus felt his knees go weak. 25 years melted away in an instant. And suddenly he was 12 years old again, standing in his foster family's kitchen, while 16-year-old Sarah Morrison made him a sandwich. She had been the older sister in that placement, the one who had looked out for all the younger kids when the adults weren't paying attention. Sarah had been the one who had saved his portion of dinner when he was late getting home from school. She had helped him with his homework, bandaged his scraped knees, and told him stories when the nightmares came. For 2 years, she had been the closest thing to family he had ever known. Then the system had separated them. As it always did. Different placements, different lives. He had looked for her over the years, especially after his success. But Sarah Morrison had vanished into the vast network of former foster children scattered across the country. And now, here she was, kneeling in the rain outside his gates. "Oh my God," he whispered. Sarah. It was the nickname only he had used. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as recognition dawned. The boy she remembered had been small for his age. with dark hair that never stayed combed, and eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. This man was tall, powerful, successful beyond anything she could have imagined, but those eyes were the same. Marcus. Her voice broke on his name. Little Marcus. He was moving before he realized it, punching in the gate code with shaking fingers. The iron bars swung open, and then he was kneeling beside her in the rain, not caring about his expensive suit or what the neighbors might think. "What are you doing here?" he asked, but his tone was gentle, wondering, "How did you find me?" Sarah's story came out in pieces. The divorce that had left her with nothing. The job she had lost when Emma was born. The friend who had mentioned seeing Marcus's name in the business section. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, the little boy she had once protected might help her now. "I didn't even know if you'd remember me," she said, tears mixing with rainwater on her cheeks. I didn't know where else to go." Marcus looked down at the baby in her arms. Emma had fallen asleep despite the storm, her tiny face peaceful and trusting. Something shifted inside his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. This was what family meant. Not blood or legal documents, but the people who had loved you when you needed it most. "Come inside," he said, standing and extending his hand to help her up. "Both of you, you're coming home." Sarah hesitated. "Marcus, I can't just." "You can," he said firmly. "You saved me once, Sari. Let me return the favor." As they walked up the stone steps together, Marcus was already making plans. Sarah would have her own wing of the house for as long as she needed it. Emma would have everything a child could want, and if Sarah was willing, there would be a place for her in his company. Using the intelligence and compassion he remembered so well, the security guard who had tried to move her earlier opened the door with a confused expression. Marcus gave him a look that said this conversation would happen later, then ushered Sarah and Emma into the warmth. The marble foyer was grander than anything Sarah had ever seen, but what struck her most was how Marcus moved through it. Despite all his success, despite the obvious wealth surrounding them, he still had that same careful way of walking she remembered from their foster home. Still glanced around, as if making sure he was really safe. "The guest suite is upstairs," he said, then paused. "Actually, no, there's a better room, one with a view of the garden. Emma will like watching the birds in the morning." As they climbed the wide staircase, Sarah felt a strange sense of coming full circle. She had spent so many years wondering what had happened to the sad little boy she had loved like a brother. Now she knew. He had grown up to be the kind of man who would remember a 16-year-old girl's kindness decades later. The kind of man who would see someone in need and open his home without question. That night, after Emma was fed and sleeping in a crib that had been delivered within hours, Sarah stood at the window of her new room and looked out at the gardens. The rain had stopped, and moonlight painted everything in silver. She thought about the long journey that had brought her here, all the wrong turns and heartbreak that had led to this moment. Tomorrow, Marcus had said, they would talk about the future, about possibilities she had never dared to imagine, about second chances and the family they had found in each other all those years ago. For the first time in months, Sarah felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope, real, solid hope, that stretched out before her like the moonlit garden below. In the room down the hall, Marcus sat in his chair by the fireplace, still amazed by the evening's events. He had built an empire, acquired everything money could buy, but nothing had ever felt as valuable as the moment Sarah had recognized his voice in the rain. Some people believed in fate, others called it coincidence. Marcus didn't care what name it went by. All that mattered was that the sister of his heart had found her way